So when you were really young, what kind of machinery did you have for doing the ploughing and doing for carrying stuff
you
and all
could
that?
hire a man. And there was men that have good teams of horses, and Isaac Fair back there. He was one of the best ploughmen.
Where did he live?
In
Clogher.
Clogher,
Yeah.
down below Ballyglass.
And were you using donkeys?
Yeah, the donkey suffered in those days, but they were a great animal.
Were you kind to them?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, right. And what happened next? What was the big change that came then? What years are you talking about there?
Back, that corn, they stopped growing much around here, I suppose, the biggest part of 30 years.
30 years ago?
Yes.
So that'd be 1980s?
Yes, and then very little corn, and then after that, but the rye used to be, there used to be more rye than wheat. Wheat, you have to have a lime land, a limestone land, but you can grow rye on any sort of land, but it grows better if you use lime. And we used to grow the turnips. And if you didn't use slag, you wouldn't have nice turnips.
So what other crops did you grow? You had rye and wheat, potatoes.
Tons of potatoes. Turnips. Sometimes mangels, cabbage, the drumhead cabbage. They used to be, some of them weigh up to 40 pounds. And that cabbage then, it was cow cabbage, but when that is whitened and get a piece of home cured bacon, not no feed can ever replace it.
Talking about food, what kind of food did you have that time?
Well, it was always whole flour bread. There'd be the bag of whole flour on the hob, and there'd be the bag, there was the two brands, Middle Cross and Heart's Delight. The Heart's Delight was a shilling dearer. It was a great flour, it was white, all white then.
And was it Irish or imported?
Oh, they were Irish.
And
big cakes then, and a cross on them. And,
what would you have for your breakfast that time?
You'd have an egg, and you'd have bread and tea usually.
Any cereals, no?
Very seldom. The cereal used to be at night, the stirabout. You'd go into a house, and the saucepan that was for a long handle, and there'd be a stick then about that long. And the stirabout would be, sometimes it'd be the Indian meal, but down later then it was just the oatmeal. And that had to be stored occasionally.
So that's stirred about?
Yes, and it got solid in at the end.
And what would you have for your dinner then? You had your dinner in the middle of the day that time, did you?
Yes, we had the dinner in the middle of the day, and you'd have the striped champagne, which was a great, the pink wouldn't be used until all the champagnes were gone. There was the Irish champagne and the striped champagne. You used to call the striped champagne the King Edward. But they were proper flour. But it's much the same as the Golden Wonder nowadays.
And would you have anything with that?
Oh, you'd have cabbage and bacon.
Every day?
Well, there was days you mightn't have it. The Friday then you had the complete fast on the Friday. You had
and why was that?
Butter, fish or butter.
And why was that?
It was Friday was a fast day.
That a religious thing, was it?
Yes, that was a religious thing. Oh, the priest.
And what happened if you ate meat on Friday?
Well, you'd have to tell the priest in confessions.
And did you ever have to tell him?
No, I never ate meat, I think, on the Fridays.
And what was the punishment if you ate it?
Oh, you'd have to say an extra penance. But everyone observed it.
Yeah.
Well, the men used to walk then miles to Mass and them fasting and receive and walk it back again fasting.
So you'd have potatoes and maybe cabbage and a bit of meat.
Sometimes turnips.
Turnip.
But turnip was, if you got good ones, they were all right.
I suppose you had your own garden, did you?
Oh yeah, we had produced everything. You had the bit of spuds there and you went to it.
Now, you have onions and...
Onions and lettuce and...
Did you ever have Kelly?
Yeah, we made it oftentimes.
That would be in the beginning of the,
Yes,
the new potatoes, is it?
yes, at the beginning, the Kelly.
And what would be in it?
They'd peel them first, then boil them, and then they were pounded. I think sometimes there was a bit pinch of flour added to dry them, and you took up then your plate of Kelly and you put a hole in the top hole, and you got a good lob of butter, and you put that in, and you started with your spoon. So it was nothing to beat. But in hot weather, it was a heavy load.
Would you have mushrooms?
It was some years they used to grow everywhere, and then there might be years again before they'd come out.
Did you fish around here?
Yes, we used to fish.
Did you poach around here?
There was nothing for poaching. There was pike. It was pike. We used to catch pike and perch and trout sometimes, and we used to go to other places fishing.
And you'd eat them, would you?
Oh, the fish were good, but it was damn hard to get used to the pike. And yet the Frenchman, he'd give you more for a pike than for a salmon.
Mm. And what would you have your tea then at night time? Or the afternoon, 6 o'clock? What time would you have your tea at?
You'd have around 5 o'clock, and you'd have tea and probably an egg, sometimes maybe a rasher.
Mm.
And the last thing at night then was the stirabout.
What time would you have that?
Before going to bed, they'd be shaping for bed from 10:30.
Yeah.
There'd be straw given into the cows and the bed settled that they wouldn't be lying on cow dung, and if they had a horse then there was a bit of feeding put in the manger in front of him, and the man had a stable lamp then, and occasionally then
Did you have a radio?
the radios didn't come for a long time. The clocks even were, there wasn't clocks in every house. And at 10 o'clock used to come at a different time in different houses. But the one, only time checking we used to get the trains. There was the 6:10, that was always. It'd be passing Island 80 at 6:10, you'd hear it chop, chop, chop. But there'd be ones earlier in the mornings, and sometimes there'd be specials when there'd be going to be cattle shifted from Westport, but the 6:10, but we had a man over that into the village, James, and every Saturday he'd go to town. He had an awful fast ass and nice, and boxes for his groceries, but he had one of these lever watches. He had bought it beyond in Hull. He was a migratory labourer. He had the history of that. The first one he got from the jeweller. And the jeweller had right and tricked him, and he brought in a policeman, and they settled for this. it never lost a second. Well, when he'd go to town on the Saturday, he'd check that with the post office, with the town clock. And it usedn't to lose or gain, had to be wound every night. There's one of them here, but it's a long time since it went.
Oh, I see, yeah. And how did you spend the long nights in winter time then?
Oh, cart playing 25. And draft playing.
You played drafts that time, yeah?
We played drafts.
And were there any visiting that time? Would you visit one of them?
Yes, so they'd be visiting and storytelling and ghost stories. And he would pick up great tales from the fellas that was in England. Then some of the accommodation, the shants they used to call them, but like the were used to buildings for the workers. But some of them used to be haunted. And they had ghost stories anyhow.
And would adults be telling ghost stories to one another, though?
Oh yes, yeah.
Not kids, like, be all adults.
No doubt, right? I mean, some other one would have to leave the other halfway home. Like there was places that there was things seen.
And did anybody ever see anything?
Well, they claimed they did.
Did you ever see anything?
Well, I did. It's an unusual thing, but it might have to do with the earth and the forest. I remember passing the night coming over, and one tree started shaking, and making noise. And I went to the bush where I thought the horse was scratching, and there was no horse. The night was as clear, you could read the headlines on a paper at moonlight night. Then, with that another about 20 yards started, and I went to the bush of that, and it was vibrating, and the one beside it quite calm. And about every 10th one then in the forest I thought the gossers had some great plan. And they used to be out playing partial and doing tricks at night, but I went to the bush every one of them and I wasn't afraid.
What did you put it down to?
Well,
the end?
I thought that it might have something to do with the earth, the energy. There's things in the earth that we don't know about. It gives off energy.